Hey. Oh, wait. Okay. Now. Hey.
We heard you the
Hey,
first
this is Dan coming to you barely live from Japan. And you know what time it is? It is some time at some point in the world that is now. For me, it's 11 o'clock. For you, it might not be. And you know what it is? It's whatever time UTC, whatever. I don't know. Why is it UTC? Why is it not Zulu anymore? Is that not appropriate anymore or something? Because I remember it being Zulu and like military time, and now it's UTC. Is that like is that not a thing anymore? Anyway, you know what time it is. It is time for your weekly dose of the mainstream, where we talk about, well, how blockchain technology is perceived by the mainstream and if it can get to mainstream adoption. And we generally say mainstream a lot. And I mostly say mainstream quite a bit. And sometimes the guests do. Today I have with me none other than Pittsburgh.
I'm a pirate today.
Oh, is that P for is that P for Pittsburgh or for pirate?
I'm a pirate. Like, the Pirates are really bad at sports, so I don't really represent the team. I just like the colors, man.
Oh, okay. I thought it was P for Pittsburgh. I'm sorry. I didn't even know there was like I didn't know the Pirates was still a thing.
They're bad.
But anyway, it's okay. It's okay. We're not going
to. That was a P for Palmyra.
P for Palmyra.
It could have been. You know, you could have covered
like blue.
Yeah, you could have covered and said, yeah, it's P for Palmyra, but it's Pirates. It's too obscure. Anyway, we got Brian with us. Hero. He's my hero. He's many a people's, many a Cardano community-ites. Cardanoites. Cardanians. Anyway, he's many of those, hero. So yeah, he's hosting with me. He still doesn't clean this camera lens. And you know what? Today you're not really seeing like something weird, right? That is Nicholas Despopoulos, and sometimes I call him Snuffleupagus. And yeah, he is our guest today. And you know what? If you actually follow our socials, I hope you do, because if you don't, you should re-examine your life. You would know that actually Nico has been in Africa for I'd say about a week, attending a tea conference and actually presenting at a tea conference and really making connections into more connections to the African tea market and just connecting with producers, connecting with people on the ground, like what we do. This is what we do, okay? And Nico's been doing that's why we have him as a guest this week to tell us what's up with your trip. Number one. Number two, you had some really good response. You had some really nice response or feedback from subject matter experts and really well-respected people on the ground. So we'd like to talk about that as well. So Nico, say hi to everybody, and please tell them about your colorful outfit.
Hi, everybody. My name is Nico. What can I tell you? Dan's kind of let you know I've been on before, working with Zengate now for we've been at it for about 2.5 years, Dan.
About like 2-ish plus, yeah. It's been a while. I can't believe it's been that long, but yeah, it has been quite a bit. I mean, I've known Nico for much longer than that.
Yeah.
For 12-ish around years. But yeah. Zengate is a little over 2.
Yeah. So, and yeah, basically bringing technology to the underserved. That's pretty much what we're all about. And that's what I was trying to accomplish when I picked up this colorful shirt, which is the least colorful of the colorful shirts I picked up. And so, yeah. What else can I tell you, Dan?
Why didn't you go for more colorful? I mean, what's up with that? Why are you not representing?
Well, I got this one too. I was just afraid that maybe it was too much.
Oh, I like that one.
That one, I would rock that one. I would.
Yeah.
I do rock this one. I just,
I like the orange. Yeah, that one.
The orange and the purple. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's almost as awesome as the people I met, because honestly, it's my first trip to Africa ever, and there are very few. I've never been to another country where I felt as welcome as fast, right? I mean, I've been to a number of countries, and everybody has their own hospitality. But man, they really are friendly people, and so many people are just honestly helpful in almost any context that you can find. So I found that to be very refreshing.
Yeah, just to clarify, Nico. So I don't think we mentioned which country you went to. So why don't you?
Very good.
Because we're like, you went to Africa. It's a really nice country. Like,
Africa is not a country; it's a continent.
Yeah. It's not Australia. It's Africa. It starts with an A, but it doesn't work the same way. Yeah. So why don't you tell the audience which countries in Africa, the continent? We know this at Zengate. We know that Africa is a continent, not a country, because we're smart. We're smart. Okay, so show the audience how smart we are.
Kenya. I went to Kenya.
Right.
Kenya is probably the biggest tea exporter in the world, and that has good and bad things for them as a tea producing country and for tea as an industry. And because there is so much tea production in Kenya, there has become an increase. They've developed an increased attention to the idea of specialty teas and adding value to their product instead of quantity. So it was the first African. And it's really important to understand that though we were in Kenya, this was an African Specialty Tea Expo with producers from Uganda, from Tanzania, from Mozambique. So really, the biggest tea producing countries in East Africa were all represented there. And just to be there amongst those people, hearing their stories and understanding their struggles and their challenges. I mean, we've become aware of the challenges that exist in agriculture in general, also in tea more in specific, but all these challenges that we hear about everywhere in terms of farming, they just become so much more acute in Africa and East Africa. It's just the lack of service in terms of technology, the lack of access to basic, just basic services that we take for granted in the West, just make it a more difficult place to conduct business.
Yeah, the thing about, I think that Africa, I mean, at least for me, right? So I'm only going to go by my personal experience, but kind of living in the global north, I guess you could say, my whole entire life.
Yeah.
The image that was projected about the global south, specifically about Africa, is that there's quite a bit of and there are some impoverished nations there, and there's also some it's complicated basically over there, right? Now,
Oh yeah.
So hold on. So what I kind of wanted to accent here is that, and this is obviously, for some people just know, no, duh. If you've been to Africa, I haven't personally. I want to go actually. I haven't been to Africa, but I've dealt with, I worked with African nations in the past. I worked with people out of Africa in the past, so I'm kind of more versed in it. And what people need to realize is that Africa is big, right? It's pretty damn big. And so just like any really big continent, there's there's a lot of, just like in Asia, right? There's poor countries in Asia. There is not so poor countries in Asia. There is, there's medium countries in Asia. And so it's really important to accent how, how wide the spectrum is in Africa,
Yeah.
and I don't think that's actually has resonated very well at the global North audience, or at least, like I said, from my personal experience, the image that's always been projected was, Africa, like blood diamonds and poor orphans, and it's like always like that, and it's really not. So I just wanted to. So where am I going with this? So I wanted to actually get your more of the story about your trip. And so what I wanted to do is actually show a couple of photos from your trip. So Vic, if you could do that for us. So why don't you kind of talk a little bit about the photos here and what's going on?
Well, this is actually inside a giant tent that they set up for the expo. The expo was a multiple, basically the entire tea week was happening here. There were, the days before the presentation started, there were stalls set up with different producers who were showing off their products. And this is actually at the Nandi Bears Golf Club and Resort. I mean, so there's really a country club, in the middle of the Nandi County. When Nandi, like in Kenya, they don't have states, they don't have provinces, they have counties. And Nandi is probably the #1 tea producing county in all of Kenya.
Just like Pennsylvania, right? Right, Brian? We don't have we just have counties, Bucks County, Montgomery County. Yeah. So it's a lot like Pennsylvania, right? It's
almost identical. Almost identical, yeah. And so I mean, it's an agricultural area. It's in the highlands, so it's cooler. That's why I'm wearing my jacket, because it's actually a bit cool. It's
also fall there, right? I mean, it's the fall. I mean, it's the global south, so it's actually getting cooler, right?
It's pretty equatorial. I mean, I don't know how cold it really ever gets, but I mean, they have a rainy season that I think that we're just coming. We had some rain, and it was amazing flying in to see, as you're flying south and you look out over the west of the continent, because as you fly in, you fly kind of along the coast of the Red Sea. And you can see all the storm systems just out over the top of the continent. This is actually on the flight from Nairobi out to Eldoret, the city that's closest to this resort where we're at. And I'm sitting there next to Bernadine Tay of Quintessential, is a company that she runs out of the UK. She's one of the founding members of ESTA, the European Tea Specialty Tea Association. And we were talking about this whole issue of, chemical testing on food products coming into the EU. And that's something that I'm working really hard with ESTA to try to find a way to work a solution to that problem into the platform, hopefully. And she was very helpful. This was this is Tamoy Teas. That's what it says there. Tamoy Teas is actually, they're in the process of onboarding to Palmyra right now. They'll be our first East African, specifically Kenyan, tea producer. And Yeah. One of their main their claim to fame is purple tea, African purple tea, or Kenyan, in their case, Kenyan purple tea, and
Did you try any?
not the purple tea. No,
I would
I
love
didn't.
to try purple tea. That would be amazing.
So
Man,
wait a second. On the last picture, what was that behind you? Was that a time machine? I think it was a time machine. What is that? Is that a time machine?
Actually, I think that's a dryer.
So it's a time machine. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. They take the leaf, they get in the raw leaf goes into the dryer, then I think it goes to the rollers. It's quite the process. And I wasn't really taking any pictures in order of process. I was just taking some what looked like cool pictures. And these are leaves that are coming in being sorted by hand. They're just being dumped out of bags, and these guys are getting them ready, and there's the end product, the very end of all these barrels and bags full of tea that have been processed.
So Nico, let me kind of ask you a bit more of a technical question, I guess, for some it might be a little bit more technical. So most factories in Sri Lanka, most tea processing factories in Sri Lanka, what they do is there's a lot of sorting that's done by hand, obviously, but there's also a lot of them have these machines. They're these actually pretty high-tech machines. They're photo processing machines that they'll put the semi-processed tea leaves in, and it actually scans the different leaves and it separates them automatically through this machine, through like this photo scanning tech that they have. And most of them have it, and it's a pretty, I was very surprised how high tech it is. Just like that one part, it's very high tech. These machines cost quite a bit. Is that something that happens in these factories, or is it strictly just kind of people picking at it and separating it by hand? Because mostly, tea is, even in the same crop, it's going to be different grades, right? So you're going to get different grades, different types, different leaves do brew differently. So even like tea is not just for those who are who might not know this, a tea plant will produce several different types of tea. Most of the time will produce several different types of tea from one plant. So I mean, it's still going to be the same kind of the same type of tea, but subtypes that will taste a bit different. And
I don't know how different it tastes. I think it's just a matter of quality based on what part
it's quality. It's quality, but it also, some of them brew a lot stronger. Some of them are a little lighter and more mild. And so it's not like, say, like an orange, right? And like growing oranges, and oranges and oranges and orange, right? An orange tree grows oranges, right? A tea plant doesn't just grow like tea; it grows different grades of it. So
it also depends on how they pluck, right? I mean, some places
exactly.
Buds. Sometimes they're taking the tips. Sometimes they're taking a bud and two leaves. I mean, that looks pretty leafy to me, but I don't think they're going past the first two leaves, because that's where you start to get a lot more astringency, like acidity, in those lower leaves. And yeah, about the technology, I didn't notice anything that was quite like that. What I saw was more of just kind of like a physical sifter that, based on the size of the leaf, it would fall through one net into another area, and if it was smaller than that, it would fall into the second, under the second net, and it would kind of sift out the larger leaves that way, just based on, does it fit through the net or not?
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't tell you about the end process here. I just noticed that there was a lot of stock. I mean, that might not even be that much stock. I don't know. That's what they had processed in the last bit of time here.
Okay, Nico, why don't you tell us about the gentleman right here?
Wow, yeah. This is I'm going to try to remember his name properly. Dr. Bernard Kalimpo Arap Lafat, I think, is his full name. He is the Minister of Agriculture for the county of Nandi, and it was quite the synchronicity that made this all possible, because my presentation was delayed by an hour, and he arrived at the expo maybe 3 or 4 hours ahead of what he had originally scheduled. So based on the shift of our two schedules, and the fact that I was able to go at all, because originally there was a Joyce Maina, our tea consultant, she was going to go, or she was invited to go, and she wasn't able to. Well, he happened to be there just for the hour that I was presenting. He asked some very good questions at the end. He was very interested in traceability, and he gave us a very strong endorsement in his remarks just after the presentation. One thing that he mentioned as well is, because he's the agriculture minister, said Nandi, they grow coffee, they grow avocado, they grow sugarcane. He'd like to see our traceability technology extended to all those different crops.
Yeah, and I just wanted to kind of mention that. Okay, I'm going to call him Dr. Bernard, so I don't have to butcher his name. My apologies. But Dr. Bernard, he actually what he said is actually available for you can check it out on the Zengate LinkedIn profile. So we actually posted a video, very, very nice video. I mean, I was listening to this. It was great because I was listening to it before I knew who he was, and then I was just, wow, this is quite an endorsement. And this person kind of, they sound like they know what they're doing, so they're talking about. And then I was like, oh, well, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, obviously they know what they're talking about, because this is the Minister of Agriculture. So let's kind of dive into that, right? So you said that Dr. Bernard was interested in traceability. So let's kind of pivot to that and explore. Okay, so what is their perception of these types of technologies, without diving too much into blockchain, getting to Web3 ish? How is it perceived, and what interests them?
Well, I mean, yeah, for them, they couldn't care less what the technology is driving it. They just simply understand that in order to stay competitive and keep access to markets, they need to be able to document, facts and data associated with what they're producing. So, if it's blockchain or if it's an Excel spreadsheet, they don't really care. And I think that's where we get to my whole perception of mainstream adoption, that the technology provides a solution to a problem and people use it without even caring what technology is driving it, right? And so I think, yeah, Dr. Bernard he's probably a little bit more turned on than most in terms of his knowledge of the different technologies available, but he certainly was very excited about the idea of having a method of gaining market access that also provided evidence of regulatory compliance and gave the producers an opportunity to tell their story. He was really interested in that. One thing that he said that he wanted to do in his remarks was that he wanted to put together an MOU between his agency and the Kenyan Tea Board to make it easier for smaller, like cottage producers, to get their tea licenses so that they could list and move their teas.
Right.
So can I jump in here for a second? You brought something up.
Yeah, Pirate, go for it.
Listen, I'm going to forget if you don't let me ask right now. So you brought this up earlier, and it was, you said they face some unique challenges, and then you just brought up a challenge. What other challenges did you learn that is kind of unique to that area that we haven't seen in the past?
I have a very strong sense of justice or injustice. I have an allergy to injustice, and I can have a very strong sense of righteous indignation. And it doesn't flare up all the time, but I heard some things that really touched me. And in particular, in Mozambique, there were stories about a number of tea producers, tea farms that were closer to, I believe, Rwanda was the border of Rwanda, and then they were to getting their tea in Mozambique. And these people would carry their tea 15 kilometers across the border of the neighboring country to sell their tea, and then they don't get paid in cash. They'd get paid in oil or soap, and they'd have to carry those kilograms of whatever product they were paid in kind with 15 kilometers back home. So you're talking about a 30-kilometer round trip on foot to try to get some sort of benefit for the crop that you're growing, and then it's not even cash. I mean, and I'm, by African standards, I grew up rich. By American standards, not so much. But there's no way in the universe that I would put up with a situation like that. And the fact that this is standard. I mean, it's just the way it is, and there's no other choice. The kind of things that people have to do just to stay alive, because they don't have access to more advanced systems of commerce. They don't have access to financing. They don't have, and they don't even have the West often fails to even perceive the value of what they have. And what I saw, at least in Kenya, I saw a country where they could sustain themselves. It's so rich in resources. The soil is so fertile. Things grow all year long, right? That if they were a little bit less hypnotized by Western standards of life, they could just tell us to take a hike. I mean, they could just tell us, hey, man, go for a long walk in the tall grass. Come back when you find us a cup of water, right? And in the end, especially when it comes to these products like coffee and tea, we need them a lot more than they need us, right? And so there is this misalignment in value perception there that I think that if they were better served in terms of technology, that they'd be able to make a case for that misalignment in value and why they ought to be getting more.
Well, I think, what I think it's actually, I mean, I hear where you're coming from, but I think it's actually a combination of things, right? So,
of course, it's always than just one
we
thing.
need them, they need us. I mean, if they didn't need us, then would need, they would come up with the technology, obviously, right? So, and I'm not trying to discount. I'm not trying to discount what you're saying, and you are correct. It's a very rich country. It's a very rich continent. And that's why I kind of said in the beginning that this misconception about, Africa, that is basically kind of perceived by quite a few in the global north as kind of like, wars, blood, diamonds, and orphans. It's really not what it is. It's just really big continent.
You can go all the way back to Julius Caesar and see Europe needing Africa, right? Because all the grain was coming from Egypt, right? And so it's over 2,000 years of this relationship.
What I think there's actually what I think is actually needs to evolve is the exchange, right? So the exchange of I don't know if you want to call it goods, right? It's not just exchange of goods, but it's exchange of value.
Yes.
Right. So we need their products, right? They need our technological know-how in a way, right? So of course, Africa's also got quite a strong IT force that is actually growing more and more, and it's I was actually speaking to somebody who worked in Africa for 20 years the other day, over 20 years. And they're saying, you know, it's not like it was 20 years ago where you really didn't have any developers over there. You didn't really have any technology companies. Now it's actually booming in that sector as well. What I think is needed, and this is just, you know, it's kind of the same as in many countries, in many different industries, right? So I guess from my personal observation, working in the IT field, is that even though capabilities to create software expand more and more to different countries, right? So you know, it's not just one or two countries. It's not just you know, all developers not Russian anymore, and all the best IT companies are not American anymore, right? Some are and some aren't. I mean, just it's a lot wider, but still there's always a dominant country or a dominant region for creating that level of innovation. So if you look at, for example, online shopping, right? Online shopping, I mean, there's a lot of different places for online shopping, right? But
Yeah.
who really pioneered online shopping, right? Amazon. I mean, really, you know, I mean, the way we see it today, today's online shopping model, that was Amazon. That's an American company, and other companies, you know, like say online auctions. Who was it? It was eBay, right?
Yeah.
And of course now you have, you know, Alibaba, which is not an American company. Obviously, you have Yahoo Auctions in Japan, which is a Japanese company. But again, these models come from one region and they just kind of get adopted by the other region, right? And I think that's actually a very healthy thing, because that's also targeting that local audience with the UX that they're actually used to. They can process a lot better. Like, for example, for me to go on the Rakuten website, which is for those who don't know, it's literally like the Amazon of Japan. It's called Rakuten. It's for me, it gives me a headache. I mean, it's just this like all these things everywhere.
Japanese web design is
it's just, to me, it's horrible. To me, it just like, it gives me a headache. There is no rhyme or reason to it. Everything is everywhere. It's like a giant flea market. But Japanese people, that's what they go for, right? That's what they like. The same with Yahoo Auctions versus eBay. Yahoo Auctions, it took me a while to figure it out because it just made no sense to me. It's like, why? Wait a second. So they can prolong the auction if they don't feel like it, but then they can't. But then there's only a certain amount. Like the what now? You know, I'm used to eBay, but then they changed the model. And so where am I going with this? Well, where I'm going with this is to the following place. Our technological relationship with Africa, and specifically with African countries that are looking to adopt technology, can be that, right? We work with them. We get them to adopt and to adapt to the technology, and then make it their own.
That's right.
And that's what I think is really important in that relationship, right? There, nobody needs to reinvent the wheel. You know, it's like that Bender line. You know, I'm gonna make a better eBay with you know, with blackjack and hookers. You know, you don't need that, right? You can there is a compromise there, and so I think that is really a healthy relationship, right? If we go to a country like Africa, like us as Zengate and other country and other companies as well. Yeah, see, I did it. You caught it, right? Yeah, you got it. To countries in Africa, right, that are looking to kind of engage in this technological revolution, if you want to call it that, work with them and not be afraid for them to say, okay, guys, you know what? We'll take this, but we need to work this out on our own, right? We're not going to be able to get offended by that. We have to understand that they need to kind of take it and run it with them, because you don't want to be in a situation where you're supporting just in software in general. I mean, I don't want to be in a situation where I'm supporting a completely different culture without having that particular culture be part of my company. It's very, very difficult to do customer service for that. So I mean that's just kind of my rant in that particular direction. And I think that is a healthy thing. That is a healthy exchange and relationship for us to have. and more specifically with these countries. So I mean, I don't know what is that the perception that you got? Is that are they looking to okay, so are they interested in the results that these technologies yield, and are they willing to work to integrate them? Not say, hey guys, do this for us, but are they willing to work and say, okay, we'll bring our best people, you bring your best people, and let's make it happen for Kenya, right? Let's make it happen for Mozambique. Let's make it happen for, I don't know, like South Africa, or just all these different places. Is that the perception that you got? Was there some resistance? Is there some kind of old world thinking like you do have, say, in like Asia, where in Asia, you know how it is, there's going to be a very innovative part of the society, and there's always going to be, unfortunately, a much larger part of like, oh, no, we don't need that. Like credit cards, we don't need credit cards. It looks like Japan, it's like, we don't need credit cards. We'll pay in cash forever. So, I mean, what was your experience in that?
Wow. So just to unpack, I was talking to Kyle Curry a little bit earlier today. He's runs a honey operation out of Zambia. He's onboarded to Palmyra, and I was expressing to him, hey, I was only there really for 2.5 days of actual time on the ground, and could only really get a sample of one country in a continent that's extremely diverse in culture and language, tradition, its relationship with the West. And in Kenya, you see they're culturally very confident people. They conduct a lot of business across the world. They're not afraid to get right in the middle of the most professional circumstances. And when it comes to and I was very careful to spend the majority of that time listening to them instead of talking. And I observed an environment where, yes, especially in the specialty tea zone, and we have to remember that we keep on running into this bifurcation between commodity tea and specialty tea. The real resistance that we see is in the big business sector, the low volume, the high volume, low margin type of trade, where opacity in the supply chain is actually an advantage for them. Mm-hmm. Right? There's one of the women that was there presenting. Her name is Cheryl Johnson. She owns Australian Tea Masters. Part of her presentation, there she is with Bernadine Tay from Quintessential in UK, and the man sitting next to them also there. That's Boaz Kata. He's the owner of Tumui Teas, right? They're onboarding with us, and so what Cheryl was saying was that, she has this presentation on English breakfast tea, and she takes all the brands that you can imagine, and she takes all their bags and she opens it up and she says it's the same garbage from everywhere. They just buy the cheapest stuff, mix it all together, and call it English tea, and she calls it the ruination of the tea industry, right? And so those people who are producing that product, maybe even emptying those tea bags and mixing it into new tea leftovers, and then bagging it again another year, right, to sell as English breakfast, that those are the people who rely upon opacity, and transparency is not something that they're going to be happy about. So, that's really where the resistance is. Everybody that was there making specialty tea, they understood that transparency was going to give them the opportunity to really tell their stories. And everyone there understood that they needed more of a technological approach for market access. Market access isn't just going to happen because they write some letters and go to some trade shows. They understand that they have to get on the internet, right? So at the same time, we have to find solutions. We have to help them find solutions and make sense with the infrastructure that they have and the culture that they have. But they're hardworking people, and they're willing. They already put in the hours, man. They put in the hours as it is, and they put in a couple extra to make a platform like Palmyra work for them. Yeah, they're the type of people to take that bull by the horns for sure.
Well, I think actually, you mentioned that, yeah, transparency or opaqueness is an advantage in that particular industry. This
Not
is
just
actually,
me.
well, this is actually something that we in the global north and in the West can have an impact on.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually where we can and are having an impact now, because more and more technology is forcing, shining light on how these particular products are attained, right? And so, I mean, where, back 20, 30 years ago, it's just like, well, tea is tea. I mean, I care when it
Milk
comes
is milk, oil is oil, right? It's
yeah,
all the same, right?
it is what it
Money,
is. It is what it is. But now, with this kind of this 21st century infusion of information into society, where I mean, think about it, Nico. I mean, we're the same age. You remember when we were like kids, in the 80s. I mean, think about it, right?
Yeah.
Brian was probably in high school or something. But anyway,
I'm in the 80s, bro. I'm not as old as you guys. Don't.
And anyway, you kind of think about that. I think about that sometimes, right? Because I mean, the 80s were reality, right? For us, we were old enough for it to be reality for us. We weren't at that kid's age where it's just like, Earth. There was stuff happening. I have memories of it. I have specific events, world events that I remember that happened. I mean, you're in your early teens and you're late single digits, whatever. And think about information availability at that point. Think about that, right? Think about how you attained information. TV, newspaper. Somebody told you stuff.
Magazine.
Right?
Yeah.
It was basically that.
Basically,
This guy told me that this and this happened. Like, really? Oh, are you sure? Oh, yeah. No, he heard that. He saw that on TV, and then
we used to have full encyclopedias in the house, and that was a thing, right? The whole bookshelf was full of A to Z. This encyclopedia was
Britannica,
supposed to have
World
exactly. It was supposed to have all the information on any topic you could ever imagine. There was no internet search. It was just let's look that up in the encyclopedia.
Encyclopedia
It doesn't
Britannica.
exist in here. I guess it's not important.
That was like that was the 80s Google.
It was.
Encyclopedia Britannica.
You can see the commercials.
Right?
Yeah.
Right on TV.
It was actually a pretty big racket back in the day, selling encyclopedias, because that was really access to information.
Yeah.
And compare that to now, right? Compare it to now. People are like, oh my God, the world is getting so much darker. There's just so much more shit happening. Well, not really. It's just you hear about it a lot more because the information is a lot much more. It's much easier to attain the information.
Yeah.
There was actually the world was kind of rougher back in the day, if you think about it, right?
Oh,
I mean, back in the 80s. Even where I grew up, the stuff that they told us, because where I grew up in the Soviet Union, it was the more like peaceful. It wasn't like on the outskirts, like on the outskirts and in the South, like Southeast is where like all the wars were and everything. And that's where all the, the crazy shit happened. But, I lived in Ukraine back then, and Russia were kind of the same, the same vibe in a way. And so that was like the safest part, I think, of all of the Soviet Union was like Ukraine, Russia, Belarus, Moldova region, right? And so even then, I mean, I kind of felt like I was in a really safe place, and then I learned about all the crazy stuff that went on around me, and I was just like, holy crap, this really happened? I had no idea. But today, there's no way really, unless you live under a rock, you wouldn't have an idea, because it's everywhere. You got smart devices, you have all these different things, right? And so where am I going with this? Well, the point here is that because of this information infusion, I think the opaqueness that is that these middlemen enjoy is going to be, it's unsustainable. It's going to become moot, right? Because there's the web, there are smart devices, there are things that
there's even the regulations coming in requiring some form of traceability
that's it.
Consumers get access to. And so you were mentioning that this is where we in the consumer developed world, we do have an opportunity to impact these things by being more conscious of what products we're buying from where, right? And so, scanning that QR code and seeing if it's giving you some, useful information about the communities and the people that you're impacting by purchasing the product, right? And so the more immutable and transparent that information becomes, right? The more value, the more pure that data is going to be, the better decisions we as consumers can make. And if there is a problem somewhere in the supply chain, heaven forbid, there's some sort of a bacterial outbreak and some
saw that giant pesticide take place.
Right. We can isolate that batch and then remove it from the
yeah. I mean, I'll give you a kind of an 80s Soviet example, right? And this is again opaqueness, right? Opaqueness in the juggernaut of opaqueness, which was the Soviet Union, was okay. So we used to have these. There were public soda fountains, right? And of course, the adults knew it was not sanitary, but kids, it's like it's a public soda fountain, and they would have these glasses. So it would be in like everywhere, right? On the street, it would in the subway, like literally in the subway, go into the subway, and they would have these like glasses on top, right? And they would just have this thing where you basically put the glass in and it sprays the inside. You might have seen them. I don't know where you would see them, but it's just this thing. It's like you put the glass on it, it sprays the inside, kind of wash it with water, and then you put the glass and you throw a coin in it. It fills it up with whatever you select. We had seltzer water, and then we had flavored.
How many people got sick from this?
Well, so let me explain something to you. So
we used to drink from garden hoses.
The government
right?
The government told us this was completely fine for years, and for years people would drink this stuff. Well, I mean, certain things came to light. Like, for example, there was a little breakout of the bubonic plague in Odessa because of this in the 20th century. They had a breakout of the bubonic plague because it was transmitted through this, and obviously, there was probably like rat feces or something on it, right? That's where it came from, and that's what I'm saying. And I mean, of course, this is kind of an extreme, 80s old school case, but this kind of stuff still happens, right?
Yeah.
And if we would have had information access at that point, a lot of this could have been, some people could have been saved from dying of the Black Plague in the 20th century.
It doesn't have to be just the Soviet Union. I remember growing up as a kid and my mom washing the peas that she poured out of the can, and she explaining to me, oh well, there is a federal allowance, there's a federal regulation that stipulates how much rat feces is permittable in a can of peas, right? And that's why I wash these. So, I mean, if you're not aware that and it makes sense, because if you have a huge processing facility, I mean, something's going to get in there, but you want to have a regulation that stipulates this is the maximum tolerance. And
Yeah,
if you
like
just
I
don't know
remember
about it, you're eating
maximum.
your peas.
Yeah, maximum tolerance of bug content in processed meats. I remember looking that up. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
because
so,
they would
but
stir it in these big cisterns, and bugs would get in
yeah.
there.
So I mean, it's just about the more that you know, the better of a better decision you can make. But more importantly, I think right now we're in a position where, I mean, for example, a buyer of ours, a very early adopter from Fernando Lopez, out of Los Angeles with Zen's Tea's house. He was telling me how big of a market there is amongst Black Americans for African teas. They want it. They want to support communities, back in Africa, and they get to do that through understanding the provenance of the products involved. And yeah, this is the second time I've seen it come up here from Natkunda, thanking me for coming to the expo, and I really want to come to Uganda as well. It's going to be. I have to come back to Africa, and the next time around, I had to leave so early because it's not convenient timing for my family, end of the school year and such. But this next time around, I'm just going to bring them with me and spend at least a month in the region. So, yeah. Another thing that I was noticing in these questions was something about a mobile app, and and it gets back to the idea of market access and getting the technology served to the people who need it, right? So yeah, I think most certainly what Palmyra Pro is meant to be a mobile application, right, Dan? For inputting the traceability.
We're actually, yes. So just to kind of give, and I always say that this is not a show to kind of shill Palmyra, but I think it's actually very important in this context. We're actually in Q3 and Q4, we're going to be scaling up enterprise build, and we're also going to be scaling up Palmyra Pro, which is actually going to be very useful for these kinds of producers. It will give them it will basically give them information access that I'm talking about, right? So,
and vice versa, will allow them to input their information,
access to what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so then you can decide, say, okay, so this producer is, I can see where this tea came from. I can do this. This guy, like, how many rat feces does he put in his tea? I don't know.
Is he gonna tell us?
Yeah, is he gonna tell us how many rat feces there are, or how many bugs, how much extra protein I'm getting with that tea, or
that gets us back to the importance of having ways of checking the data, and why my discussions with the members of ESTA are so important for working out a solution for providing these import tests that are so important, right? So whether it's animal waste or residual chemical leftovers from pesticides. But that's one thing that's amazing about most of these producers. Everything's being done by hand, and everything like weeding the fields is being done by hand. They're not using chemical fertilizers. They're not using chemical pesticides. They're expensive. It's too much of a cost. And two, it produces some of the finest products you could ask for. And because they can't afford certification, they're not recognized as organic, but they most certainly are in terms of their production. And that was another thing that Cheryl had said from Australian Tea Masters, that she as a buyer, she no longer cares about organic certification. She wants, if she can know that it was produced organically, that's enough for her. Doesn't need to see a piece of paper attached to it. And we've seen that kind of attitude from others as well. So I think there's an opportunity, if we can, I've said this quite a bit in the past, if we can capture the data that fulfills organic certification, then why do we need to have it certified? Maybe we just become We have a Palmyra sustainability badge, you know, and you have sustainable plus, and plus plus. And if they don't have sustainable as a rating, then they're not on that scale. We leave them alone. We don't give them a black mark. We just don't give them bonus either, right? So we can start to collect this data and be able to have people demonstrate that they're producing things organically, even if they aren't in a position to be able to afford the certification themselves.
It's funny that you kind of bring this up, right? Because none of this, truthfully, in the past, none of this really mattered to me, right? And not saying on the Zengate side, just knowing where my food came from. I would just take my fruit and I would wash it. But now that I'm kind of watching my diet and everything, I'm very attuned to what I'm eating and what I'm putting into my body. And it's hard to get facts. It's just hard to come across facts in the real world on what you're putting into your body.
And that's why here in Italy, it's great because the food system is so decentralized. I can just walk down the street and go right to the nearest farm, and I know exactly what that person is putting on their crops, and I can just get fresh seasonal fruits and vegetables right away.
And I live in Amish country, and I don't know if you know what Amish people are, but I literally live dead smack in the middle of Pennsylvania, Amish country. I can go down the road to farms and pick strawberries or whatever fruit, and that's great because I know exactly where it came from. But if I go to the grocery store, produced in Mexico, produced in all these other countries, I was a truck driver once. I know what some of that transportation looks like, and you don't know what has happened to that fruit that was on that box van for 3 weeks because you couldn't find a driver because he was out of hours or yada, yada, yada.
And you harvested it before it was ripe because you knew that it was going to ripen during the trip, right? And you always know that, I mean, it's not as good. There's no way it can possibly be as good. So, or, you know, coating it with wax to decrease the amount of
strawberries in their wax, man. Oh my God.
Yeah. So all these things. So, you know, I think, you know, I made some really good relationships that I hope that we can capitalize on, not just for our own sake, but, you know, for their communities in Kenya and in East Africa. Wonderful people, industrious people, hardworking people, and also very modest people. You know, that I hope that we're going to be able to bring something to them that will uplift their businesses and the communities that they exist in. I mean, I think that's really that's what excites me the most about the work that we do is making that kind of difference for people who haven't had access before.
Yeah. It is the catalyst for this, for what I was saying, right? So kind of catalyst for their own innovation, and it's okay for us to bring them the Amazon and then for them to come up with their own Rakuten, right? And it's always, I mean, I always say that about just blockchain tech as well. You have to kind of make peace with the fact that the mainstream yeah, time to drink. Every time I say mainstream, it's a shot, right?
That's 4 now.
That's 4. So the mainstream is not going to care about a lot of the things that you care about. You know, you blockchain people that you care about. They're not going to care about it. They're going to care about how it makes their lives easier, how they can pay their bills faster, how they can get access to finance faster, how they can get more information about, you know, no bugs in their food easier, right? They want to know that, you know, no children were used to harvest their strawberries or, you know, things like that, right? They're going to care about that. And this is what I'm saying with innovation. We bring the innovation to this region. We work with the region. We let them take it and run with it and make it their own. And that's what I think a healthy relationship with the region is going to look like. and that's what I'm going to be pushing for us at Zengate while we're working with these regions. And I think yeah, we did have somebody. Yeah, Benjamin actually mentioned open source tech also promotes meritocracy. Sorry, my brain is scrambling right now.
Meritocracy.
Meritocracy. Yeah, no, I pronounced it right, but I was about to say mediocrity, but
That's what I read the first time too.
Yeah, no, meritocracy, which leads. Yeah, thanks, Benjamin. Thanks for using big words at midnight my time.
Can I
Don't
give
you-
that
Leads
word?
to truer
Reciprocity.
Sorry, reciprocity, in my opinion.
Benjamin, don't you go be using them big words on Dan. You know
Yeah,
he's
no,
illegitimate.
I caught it. But the thing is, then I had to stop. Say, does that really say reciprocity? I'm like, oh yeah, it does say reciprocity. Okay. Anyway, I think that, and I wanted to kind of maybe leave it off at that. I think that from the perspective that we take in the Cardano and the Ergo community, about open source being really, really important. This is actually where it makes the most impact, right? You go there, this is gonna, these products are open source. You work with them, you design an entry point, and then you have them take that open source and make it their own, make their own whatever they need to do with it, right? So yeah, I do believe that open source is going to be a big value add for that relationship, and yeah, I'm just really looking forward to being able to and for us to being able to contribute to that. Anyway, guys, I think it's about that time when I'm going to stop butchering big words and people's names. And yeah. Wait, was that God? Somebody was saying something, but nobody's lips were moving.
Nick's been freezing the whole show for me.
Have I?
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah. No, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah, it just reminds me of a Real Genius. When they put the microphone in the guy's ear and he thought he was talking to God. Like, can somebody put a microphone in my ear? Like, God. Anyway,
Hey, I just want to spit out some facts here real quick because we were talking about Kenya and their tea.
Yeah, do it.
Kenya's economy, 23% of the total foreign exchange earnings and 2% of the agricultural GDP. That's a big number. 49 different varieties of tea, including the purple tea, which has more antioxidants than green tea. So
That's
now, Nico, next time you're in Africa, you need to bag up some purple tea for me and get it.
I think our man Boaz Gata, he must be watching as well. We just need to ask him to send us some.
Yeah, I got to try it now. Like purple.
Maybe instead of asking him to send us some, maybe we just need to buy some.
Well, I'll buy it. You know me. I'll buy it.
And then we just
Got to try it.
Anyway, Anyway, we do need Nico, purple tea us later, okay? Purple tea us next time.
Okay.
I need to antioxidize. I'm too oxidized. I'm getting rusty. Anyway, guys, I think it's a good time to leave it off for this week. See, I don't know if that startled look is just Brian's connection freezing, or is that really just really easily startled? Yeah, there we go. Yeah, it's like 1997 again and talking on video phone. Anyway, all right, guys. Well, Nico, thanks for joining us this week.
My pleasure, gentlemen.
And thanks for giving us the scoop on Africa, the continent, and the countries in Africa that are on the continent of Africa that are not named Africa. Except there's one called South Africa, but anyway, we're not gonna.
But they're all part of the mainstream,
right? And they are part of the mainstream.
That's 3 more shots, folks.
Yeah. Anyway, guys, Thanks for tuning in this week. Thanks for watching. Thank you for all the nice comments and questions that you've sent us. And yeah, next week, same time, same place, same channel, same YouTube channel. And until then, this is Dan, barely alive from Japan, but still kicking, signing off.